health and physical health are critical. So your health is critical to your performance as an operator, your ability to stay in enjoyment, to maintain your personal discipline, all that is critically important. And methylene blue is so powerful against disease that it's literally, if you didn't know this, it's the origin of the phrase magic bullet. The first time magic bullet was ever uttered out of a person's mouth, it was uttered to describe methylene blue. That's the reason we have the term magic bullet, because of methylene blue. Super awesome. But what if there was a chemical similar to methylene blue that had the same amount of power or more that could transform your life as you know it? I'd like to introduce you to that chemical tonight. And the moment that I say what this chemical is, you're going to have all kinds of preconceptions. And that's understandable and that's okay, because you've been told something different your whole life about this one chemical. And if you're taking notes, this is definitely worth writing down. Every single disease has one thing in common, no matter what disease you're thinking of right now. It's when a stressor to the body has exceeded the body's ability to adapt to that stressor. Whether it's epilepsy or COVID or a urinary tract infection or gonorrhea, it's all the same. And it all starts with that same little thing. And I'm going to read you a quote right now. I'm going to pull it up here on the screen. And this is a quote from one of the most highly educated scientists on planet Earth, in the world, has been nominated for Nobel Prize. He's a relatively smart dude, and he's a doctor as well. Here's the quote. Right now, melatonin in your blood is preventing the oxidation of LDL cholesterol, which is the bad cholesterol that can clog your arteries. Melatonin inside your brain is safeguarding your irreplaceable neurons from free radical attacks. Melatonin in the fluid inside of your eyes is helping to prevent cataracts. Melatonin in the lining of your gut is reducing your risk of ulcers as we speak. And as you hear this, melatonin is the most, I'm going to keep going with the quote here. Melatonin is the most potent, versatile antioxidant. And this guy's name is Dr. Russell Reiter, Reiter. So lots of people heard me say melatonin and you thought, oh yeah, the sleep thing that you get at the drugstore. It's the sleep chemical. And that's common. That's incredibly common. Melatonin is a miracle. It is truly a miracle. And I think it has the potential to drastically change your entire life. So I want to fix your psychological relationship with it, because it's been victimized by maybe big pharma. And it's one of the most incredible things you'll ever see when it comes to just living better and longer and deeper with more extreme health. First, quick show of hands from everybody. Who has heard of or listens to Dr. Andrew Huberman Lab? Okay. He's only ever said one thing that I vehemently disagree with. He says that melatonin is dangerous. So I wondered why. And I dug into the research that he cited. There's research that casts a bad light on it that's super old. And there's, for every one research paper that says melatonin might be dangerous, there's 10,000 that say it's a miracle. So just keep that in mind. But if you read it carefully, you'll see something different. And I think Dr. Huberman claimed that melatonin lowers testosterone, which is important for men and women. But the problem was that he based that information on a study that was done in rodents. So when it comes to the brain, yes, we can test a whole lot of stuff in rodents. But when it comes to endocrinology, which I'm a neuroendocrinologist, there's something off about testing rodents and humans. And if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm going to tell you in a minute. So rodents are not copies of humans, if you didn't know that already. The melatonin works differently in rodents. So we all know melatonin is associated with like looking out into the sun and sunlight exposure. We all get kind of into that. But think about this for just a minute. Melatonin regulates our sleep-wake cycles, and it lowered testosterone in rats. Rats are nocturnal, the opposite of humans, especially when it comes to melatonin. So when it comes to animal models and not just rodents, if you look at all animal models where melatonin's been studied, it's shown to extend animal lifespan by 20% in every animal model that it's been studied in. So every cell in your body makes melatonin, almost. So this is actually a new scientific discovery. We didn't know this like 15 years ago. We thought melatonin was maybe in your gut a little bit and in the pineal gland, which is still a humongous mystery. Anytime you hear somebody speak about the pineal gland and they tell you they know exactly what it does and this is how it works, they're full of shit. Because we don't know. We really don't know much about it. We know that it has a lot to do with melatonin production and more specifically the release of melatonin. It tells your body when to get rid of it and when to start dumping it into the body. So up until pretty recently, people thought it was all produced in the pineal gland. Every cell in your body makes melatonin. That's a badass brand new discovery. Even I have a baby that's due on Christmas Eve. She'll be here, and already her body's making melatonin, and her body's making melatonin in levels that this tiny baby, which according to research is 9 inches long right now, so she's about this big, maybe give or take, has enough melatonin in her body that the words of a lot of these scientists say that it would be toxic to me. And there's about 10 to 30 times that amount of toxic melatonin inside this tiny fetus's body. Just process that for a second. And we're going to dive deep into that here in a minute. But if I take melatonin, is my body going to stop producing it? This is what most people think. If I take melatonin and then I stop in a high dose, let's say I take a shitload, I take a bunch every day, and then I all of a sudden, boom, I go cold turkey and stop melatonin. It's kind of like if I take testosterone, right? If a male, I guess, or female ingests testosterone, which is called exogenous testosterone, we stick it in a syringe or something like that, and then the body says, oh, whoa, we need to pump the brakes on testosterone thing. So it stops making it itself. Melatonin 100% does not work this way. And this every scientist will agree with. So it's not toxic in any way either. So people have pretty recently said that melatonin might be toxic to kids. This was some weird kind of a fringe study that was done, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. It's made in every cell of our body. So if it was toxic to kids, kids would just die suddenly. It's made in every cell of your body. And you can do your own research on this. And I'm going to even include a bunch of videos for you to watch if you're more interested in this. You're going to learn a lot about melatonin tonight, though. You'll know more than a lot of the people that are maybe talking about it on YouTube. So kids have a ton of melatonin in their bodies. This is why we see kids being so completely resilient to illness and body stress. And one of the actual determining factors of true health, according to me at least, and a million doctors, is something called heart rate variability. If you don't know what this is, if my heart beats like this and then there's another beat, what's the variation between that? How far does it stretch and contract throughout the day? So having a good heart rate variability goes down as we get older. So, and you can look that up if you want to later, but heart rate variability is there. And you'll see that as we age up to age 40, our bodies produce less and less and less melatonin, especially after age 40. This is for women and men. So what's interesting is that if I took an overlay, like those little clear things you put on a projector, those little clear sheets, and I charted melatonin levels and heart rate variability, they line up perfectly over each other as we get older. And the decline is almost identical for both of those things. So I think an Apple Watch will track your, I'm not even wearing mine, but Apple Watch will track your heart rate variability. So let's talk about melatonin. What is it? What actually is this thing called melatonin? I'm going to show you a picture of what it looks like here in a second. Then I'm going to show you a picture of melatonin just casually hanging out with a DMT molecule and a psilocybin molecule. And then you can see maybe they look similar to each other. So melatonin is an adaptogen. That's how we classify melatonin. It's an adaptogenic chemical. So what this means is it makes everything in your body respond to cellular stress and mental stress in a way that makes the cells stronger and more healthy. So it makes them stronger, makes them immune to stress, and makes them healthier at the same time. So an example of this is when somebody stays in the sun all day. Like you've seen this, somebody goes on vacation, they get drunk on the beach or something, they fall asleep, they get like what's called like a level 3 sunburn, where it's like super bad, it's their skin's peeling off and stuff. If you took a high dose of melatonin, that allows you to stay in the sun all day without damaging your skin or getting a bad sunburn. So this is just one way that we can see the cellular stress adaptability on an exterior level of our body. That's happening on the inside of your body too, not just the skin. So all I meant by the sunburn example is, I'm not telling you to go do that, but it protects cells so well that you can see that example on the outside of your body, just going out in the sun. And I'm fine. I'm not going to get a sunburn. I'm not going to get skin damage. So it goes in and it works as an adaptogenic chemical to make your cells more resilient to damage, like invincible to damage almost. So energy, well, wait, let me go back. So to understand how melatonin works, you're going to need to know how our bodies make energy. And I promise I'm not going to go deep into this. But energy in our bodies made within our mitochondria in the cell. So this is the number one word you're going to hear is powerhouse. It's the powerhouse of the cell. Yeah. How does that work? Let me just give you a 3-sentence example, and you'll never forget this. You imagine it as like a little multiple layer thing. So like there's 4 or 5 layers here, and this thing goes through and produces energy as it goes through the mitochondria. That thing is an electron or a proton. What do those things do? What does an electron and proton do? They spin around. They're crazy, right? You've seen them on science TV shows. They just spin around. Once it locks into the melatonin, the mitochondria, that spinning creates heat, and the cell uses that little tiny bit of heat to start moving it through to the next level and generating energy. So that's kind of how that works. I'm going to show you a complex chart of that in a minute. That's all you really need to know. So when our bodies are super stressed out, and I mean on a cellular level, the mitochondria don't work to make energy as well, if at all. And sometimes the mitochondria stop making energy. So now what happens? Our bodies revert back to before in evolution. They transform themselves back to 1 million years ago. So our bodies go back to this alternative method of making energy that's actually outdated and an ancient energy factory that our bodies used before mitochondria existed. Before mitochondria existed. So this is called fermentation, which doesn't sound good to have going on in your body. I hope it doesn't sound good, unless maybe you're an alcoholic. So what would this mean? What this would mean is that this is what's called anaerobic energy production. Anaerobic energy production. Anaerobic just means without oxygen. So your body says, oh, I don't need that oxygen. I can do this other thing over here because of all the stress that's going on. So when our mitochondria are so stressed out, they stop making energy and they shift to this primitive energy production process without oxygen. This is called the Warburg effect. The Warburg effect. So the Warburg effect is named after this dude called Otto Warburg, and he literally won the Nobel Prize for this discovery that cancer cells do not grow in the presence of high-functioning mitochondria with oxygen in them, period. So this dude was the only guy to win the Nobel Prize that entire year for medicine. And he was later in his life nominated for 47 more Nobel Prizes for even more discoveries that he made. So he's a badass when it comes to this stuff. He's incredible. And as an added bonus, he also looks exactly like Michael Scott from The Office, if you ever look him up, which is just hilarious. So the Warburg effect is this observation that cancer cells produce energy not through the usual something that's called citric acid cycle and something else that's called oxidative phosphorylation in the mitochondria, like a normal cell. But they use this less efficient process of aerobic glycolysis. And this is a high level of glucose uptake and glycolysis, followed by this lactic acid fermentation. So this lactic acid there, then it kind of ferments in place in the cytosol. And cytosol is just the soup that's inside of a cell. It's the liquid inside of a cell, not the mitochondria. So it stops using the mitochondria and goes to this primitive, like before humans existed, type of technology to make energy. So they don't use the mitochondria even when there's a ton of oxygen all over the place that they can use. So cancer cells prefer this other kind of energy production. So that is what's interesting. He started everybody down this pathway to be able to understand and hopefully cure cancer someday. So in your brain right now, let me recap you and get you up to speed. There's two ways our body can make energy: anaerobic glycolysis and mitochondrial respiration. Anaerobic glycolysis is this no oxygen, old-timey stuff. Mitochondrial respiration means your mitochondria is breathing. It's oxygen. So when I was in school, I think I invented this, but I memorized this for the test. The way I memorized it is brewing or breathing. So like making beer or breathing, brewing or breathing. So that made sense to me anyway. So let me bring it up in a way. Advanced sharing options. I figured this out today. Nope, maybe that's not it. Damn it, I didn't figure it out yet. Oh, there we go, advanced. Second. Hopefully this works. Is it working? I think it's working.
Yeah, it's good.
All right. So this is
Excellent.
what melatonin looks like. I feel really proud of myself for doing this, but we'll get to that later. So this is melatonin here. So melatonin has this interesting structure and shape to it. You don't have to memorize all the carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen stuff here, but everything here is a melatonin molecule. So now let me show you melatonin flipped upside down and reversed. It's the same molecule, just flip it over and spin it around. Okay. Now here's that same molecule sitting next to serotonin. And here's psilocybin. And here's DMT, dimethyltryptamine. And just to show you, it does not look like LSD. So melatonin is pretty badass. And before we get started, I want to show you a couple of things because anyone, I mean, myself included, listening to this would think, oh, Chase is talking about some fringe science, some fringe stuff that's maybe out on the edge. But we're not. So this is just standard ass science. I'm not going to go through all this, I promise, but this is what it looks like when we have the electron transport chain. And it turns into, right here, ATP at the end of all of this, which is adenosine triphosphate. That's our body's energy cell or energy molecules. And this is the citric acid cycle. So this is a long ass cycle, but you'll see if it gets disrupted, cytokines come out. You get sick, we have cytokines, and we have another thing called reactive oxygen species or free radicals that just jump out of these things. Okay. I just want you to read a couple of these. Inhibits COVID-19. This is the National Library of Medicine for the US government. And it reverses and it stops the cytokine storm from COVID and reverses, not stops, reverses aerobic glycolysis in immune cells. Like literally turns them back around and makes them perfect again. This is unheard of. Prevention and treatment of cancer. For autism spectrum disorders. Multiple sclerosis. Epilepsy. This was just a miracle article, far beyond the pineal gland. There's the therapeutic benefits of melatonin against COVID-19. More COVID-19. Evidence that it stops or prevents it, and that if you were taking it and then were exposed to COVID-19, you don't even get COVID. COVID is 99.87% more effective than the V word. So now that we're just kind of getting started here, it's pretty badass. I hope you'll at least begin to agree. So let's talk about what it can actually do. So number one, it's an antioxidant. Antioxidant means it's targeting free radicals and converting them back into healthy stuff that your body actually needs. So melatonin is what we call a scavenger of reactive oxygen species. And one molecule of melatonin can scavenge 10 reactive oxygen species at a time. This is a huge deal. This is when oxygen does not get converted into water properly so that it can be digested out. So it also scavenges RNS, reactive nitrogen species. And this is what damages your cells, this brain tumor, cancer, all of that kind of neurodegenerative diseases, one of which I have and have zero symptoms for. So by reducing this oxidative stress, melatonin prevents DNA damage. DNA damage is really what causes the symptoms of a lot of these diseases because your DNA starts getting screwed up. So if I'm holding my finger down on a button on a calculator, and then you type in all the problems you want, the answer is always going to be wrong because there's damage to how it's processing information. So if you want to use a metaphor here, imagine like your bodies or maybe your cells are like a city. Now in the city, there's some small fires. So we'll call these fires like the reactive oxygen species and reactive nitrogen species. And these fires occasionally kind of just break out around the city. And they can damage a bunch of buildings, which are the parts of a cell, especially super important structures like the city's library. And the library contains all the instruction manuals on how to do everything. And this represents our DNA. So if these instruction manuals are burned or damaged, the city is going to start building shit wrong. And this leads to a horrible, chaotic city layout, which continues to multiply and compound on itself. So melatonin acts like the firefighter that puts out all of these small fires. And in doing so, protects the library and keeps the city functioning. So it helps to put out the fires in our cells that can cause severe damage. And it's weird to think that the damage to DNA in one cell is what turns into cancer. One cell. which is just bizarre to even think about. And it also regulates estrogen receptor activity. So all the men are like, oh, well, that's not me. Well, it is. So melatonin inhibits the uptake of something called linoleic acid, and especially for women. Uh, Linoleic acid is what's in breast cancer cells. So it reduces the production of something called 13-HODE, which is hydroxy something satanic acid, HODE. So this in turn just reduces all of the actions of estrogen on the estrogen responsive breast cancer cells. It just turns it off. It's like a light switch, which is incredible. So for this, you just imagine like a club, like a nightclub, and let's call it the estrogen club. So now for certain parties at this club, sometimes people will try to sneak in with like a ton of drugs that they want to hand out to everybody at the party. And this in turn, is going to lead to this wild, uncontrollable weirdos bouncing off the walls inside the club, which we don't want to have. People are going to just go ape shit crazy. So these represent the growth or proliferation of breast cancer cells. Now, if you think of melatonin as a super strict bouncer at the club, this bouncer stops everybody from bringing in the drugs, which inhibits the uptake of the linoleic acid. So without the drugs, the wild party cancer cell growth doesn't happen, or at least is severely reduced. And if the bouncer is put in place at the right time, the bouncer can double himself and turn into 2 or 3 and go inside the club and kick those people out. Super cool. Next, it modulates our immune system. So it stimulates the production of something called cytokines that regulate our immune responses. So a strong immune system is obviously crucial for identifying and destroying cancer cells and all kinds of other bad stuff before they turn into tumors and breast cancer and brain cancer and leukemia and all that stuff. So if you imagine like your immune system as your body's kind of police force, the police are all responsible for identifying, stopping criminals before they can cause problems in the city. And in this scenario, the criminals are just the potential bad cells or even cancer cells. So melatonin is like the chief of police who gives out walkie-talkies to all of the officers. Now they can kind of talk to each other. And that's where we get the cytokines coming in. So now all the police can finally, once and for all, talk to each other and radio back and forth and say, hey, I saw this dude over here. And now a whole bunch of police can show up at the right place at the right time and stop this stuff early before they start building up into gangs and mafias and all of that, which we would just call a tumor or otherwise some kind of illness in your body. So your immune system gets really, really good at communicating and stopping cancer a lot earlier. And it learns about all kinds of stuff since the police have these radios now. So this means your body develops better antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, and even tuberculocidal, anti-tuberculosis properties, all kinds of crazy, amazing stuff. So next, it inhibits cancer cell growth. So it inhibits the proliferation of cancer cells in lab studies, and it can induce what's called cell cycle arrest. So it stops cancer cells from growing and dividing. This is a huge deal, just like the police thing again. Next, it has anti-angiogenic effects. So angiogenesis, if you don't know, I think most of you might know, is just how tumors grow new blood vessels to obtain nutrients. So a tumor can now start taking control over your body since it has its own DNA. Remember, it has that screwed up DNA. So your body thinks, oh, that's part of me. So let's say in this little city, there's a gang and the gang has a headquarters in an abandoned warehouse. I got to stop with these metaphors, but I'm going to keep going. This gang has to get supplies. They've got to have all supplies coming in. They've got to get food and bullets and guns and all kinds of crazy colored bandanas and stuff to do drive-bys and all that all around your body. So melatonin is like the city planning committee where they just automatically determine that every road, alleyway, secret tunnel is completely stopped to that gang that's living in the warehouse. Zero resources, and the gang dies. Everybody in the gang can't eat, can't drink water anymore. They're dead. So that's how melatonin works for those kinds of cells. This next benefit is probably my favorite because it's called apoptosis or apoptosis, depending on what professor you had. And apoptosis is what we also call programmed cell death. So in a lot of cancers, this process is super disrupted, and it lets these damaged cells that should have committed suicide. Yes, our cells have pre-programming. When certain parameters are met, they know that they're damaged enough that they kill themselves off. Then they send out other chemicals so the cells nearby can check themselves to see if they're damaged, and then they can kill themselves. This is a good thing. We want that in our body. So melatonin restores the apoptotic process in some cancer cells, almost all of the cancer cells, leading them to self-destruct. So cancer cells are still your cells. That's what people don't really realize. They think it's some foreign body inside of me. It's my cells that got screwed up, and they're not allowed to kill themselves. They're not allowed to sacrifice themselves for me, for the greater good. They're very selfish. So apoptosis, referred to as the cell death, is this critical process that our body needs to do. This is how the body cleans out all the stuff that it doesn't need anymore. So it's a ton of very, very tightly regulated steps that lead to the destruction of the cell's internal parts. And then it's the removal by our little immune cells that are going around, the police force. Say, hey, there's some dead cells over here. Now the police work better, so they get cleaned out of the body even faster because of melatonin. So this ensures that our damage, our inflammation is at an absolute minimum, and our body can function crazy good is what I mean. So when apoptosis is functioning correctly, old cells are efficiently removed. Potential cancer cells with harmful mutations are destroyed before they can proliferate. And the tissue in our body maintains this perfect little homeostasis, totally balanced. And apoptosis is cells, or maybe in cancer, the failure of this is cells get screwed up, they lose the ability to self-destruct, and then they conglomerate and they start getting all onto each other. Then it starts recruiting blood vessels and even neurons into some of these. And some cancer tumors can grow their own hair and teeth and optic nerves. That's pretty bizarre. All right, so that's all pretty cool, but why does it stop you from getting a sunburn? This leads us to our next one, which is radiation protection. So melatonin has radioprotective effects, which means it literally protects healthy cells from radiation. So you can even take melatonin before you go get an X-ray. So this is high energy radiation that has enough, when we talk about ionizing radiation, is high energy radiation that's got enough energy to remove tightly bound electrons from atoms. This is all sciencey stuff, but this just turns them into charged particles. They're not neutral anymore. So examples are like X-rays, gamma rays, particles from anything radioactive like uranium can do all of this, or cobalt or cesium. Cobalt is what's in most dental X-ray units. If you've read Belgrade Archer, then you've read all about that stuff. So we had ionizing radiation, then we have non-ionizing radiation. So what does that mean? It doesn't create these positively charged ions. So what is that? So this is low energy radiation that doesn't have enough energy to just bust apart atoms. So this is like ultraviolet rays from the sun, microwaves, And to all the hippie energy people in here, Kisma, Aditya, even radio waves. You heard it. You heard it here. It's actually proven. So both forms of these things, and I'll get into that, can damage our body in way different ways. So ionizing radiation can disrupt atomic structures. So one atom, if you can think about this, one atom getting screwed up can lead to cancer down the road or can lead to all kinds of other illnesses. An atom, which is like, how the hell are we alive? Was my question going through this in college. So this leads to DNA mutations and cancer risks. And this non-ionizing stuff like the sun or radio waves can cause thermal injuries and DNA damage through indirect means. So it doesn't directly damage the DNA. So since melatonin is this antioxidant powerhouse, radiation can create free radicals, which are unstable molecules that are super eager to bond. They're really thirsty molecules, super thirsty in the modern sense of the word. They really just want to get with another molecule, and this causes damage. Melatonin neutralizes free radicals and kind of prevents them from going full Casey Anthony on the rest of our cells. The next thing it does with this radiation stuff is inflammation reduction. So all kinds of radiation causes inflammation in tissues. Melatonin reduces the inflammation and makes recovery a lot faster and minimizes the damage. And DNA damage is a super serious concern with radiation exposure. So melatonin buffs up our cellular DNA repair systems and makes instantaneous correction of radiation errors. So radiation screws something up. It helps our cells to recognize the DNA screwed up really quickly. So if you're going through radiation therapy and you have cancer, let's say you know somebody with stage 4 cancer that's going through this kind of like proton therapy, all kinds of different cancer therapies. Melatonin can make all of your cells less damaged by that radiation. This is all proven. Everything I'm saying here is proven. Even diagnostic procedures, like going in to get a CT scan, which is like getting 1,000 x-rays, it's very bad. Sometimes you need it. Sometimes you need a CT because you have a head injury or something like that, and that's just a trade-off. But every molecule that radiation touches, and that radiation is matter, it's actual matter going through you. So it's not just like a little wave, it's going through you. It gets damaged. But then everyday protection we have with melatonin, like UV exposure and sunburns. And finally, the EMF. Everyone's been waiting for me to say it. EMF is bad for you. So there's a lot of concern, and I'm not anti EMF or anything. I literally have a Faraday beanie. And we'll talk about that another time. But this is there's a lot of concern right now in academic literature. EMF is electromagnetic frequencies, about this effects of radiation from Wi-Fi and cell phones and all kinds of other stuff, which we don't really know about. And a lot of brand new studies are saying that melatonin's natural protective role can severely reduce the damage to cells and cellular DNA from all of that stuff as well. So next, we have circadian rhythm. And if our circadian rhythm's disrupted, and like a lot of people suffer from this who work in shift work and stuff like that, melatonin's regulation of sleep-wake cycles plays a huge role in this. And here's my favorite, is anti-aging. If you look at what aging actually is, here's what aging is. And this is why you look older, why you feel older. It's the body's natural and progressive loss of the ability to adapt to its environment. A natural and progressive loss in ability to adapt to environment. So melatonin is actually the body's aging clock. Just based on the research we have now, you can take someone's melatonin levels and pretty much guess how old they are. That's how reliable it is going down as we age. So when more melatonin is present, it sends a young signal throughout your body for cells to be young again. And they even use the words young signal in the research. So it helps all the cells stay younger and healthier. And it's also antiviral, if you didn't have that figured out. There's some really cool studies where they injected animals, rats are included here, with a deadly virus, a virus with like a 95, 93% mortality rate in these animals. So they injected them. So the percentage of animals who survived without melatonin was 6%. 6% of the animals survived that had no melatonin supplementation. The percentage of animals who survived a lethal illness that had melatonin in their system was 82% survival. That's a big deal. That's a huge difference. And this is why the high levels of melatonin in kids makes them just perfectly immune to like damn near everything. And then what's another thing? We want to be young, but what else do we want? We want a good metabolism. Melatonin steps in again. It boosts metabolism and it even raises HGH, human growth hormone, which can keep your eyes, your skin, and everything else looking sexy. Then we have stress. I talked about stress. This whole talk tonight was about stress. What about mental stress? There's been a ton of research that says melatonin is just as effective as prescription drugs used for anxiety with zero side effects and depression. So this is a huge avenue of hope, I think, for a lot of people that are trying to get off the prescription drugs that automatically just come with this grocery bag full of side effects that you've just got to deal with. There we go. So we've got a lot of the benefits. There's probably 100 more that I could go through. But will your body actually stop making it? This is called a feedback mechanism. So unlike a lot of our hormones, melatonin doesn't operate on a feedback loop. So where increased levels from an external or exogenous source is going to immediately suppress melatonin production. Doesn't do that. Testosterone, for example, has a perfect direct feedback mechanism. If you do introduce more from the outside, exogenous, the body's going to decrease its own production in response, unless somebody's taking something to counteract that, which is like HCG. It stands for human chorionic gonadotropin. They literally don't know how to make it in a lab, so they have to hire volunteer pregnant women to pee. And it's made from pregnant woman pee-pee. That's how we make HCG to stop the downregulation of testosterone. So melatonin's regulatory bodies, their regulatory mechanisms, are influenced by light and darkness and not its concentration in your bloodstream. Light and darkness. So like if you wake up and stare into the sunlight, boom, your body starts, what do you think? Stopping or making melatonin? Making melatonin when the light's on. Then at nighttime, when the sun's down, typically 40 minutes after sunset, your body says, oh, now it's time to start releasing the melatonin. So it makes it in the light, releases in the dark. Super cool. But it has a really short half-life. So that means we metabolize it and eliminate it from the body pretty quick. So this means if you take it supplement in the evening, it's probably out of your body's system by the time everything would have faded out. And our body's natural production of melatonin doesn't really remain constant, and it tends to peak in the evening and then it drops early in the morning. And if you're taking melatonin supplements at the right time, which should be in the evening, you're mainly augmenting your body's natural peak rather than replacing it. If you take them in the evening, you're taking it while your body's naturally and gently ramping it up anyway. So that's instead of replacing it during the day. And you're thinking, oh, it's going to make me tired. We're going to get to that. It won't. So the doses of melatonin in supplements can vary a whole lot, but even the higher doses tend to be within a range that the body might actually naturally produce. So even though your body senses that additional melatonin, it doesn't see it as an overproduction that would stop your little melatonin factory. So long-term and short-term use of melatonin does not stop melatonin production in the body. And there's tons of studies that show this. So you're thinking, well, melatonin is the sleep drug. I've already told you that it's not. I told you that 50 minutes ago, but you're still thinking it. Let's talk about that for a second here. Melatonin is so associated with sleep that it's still in your head an hour later after all of this. But I want you to rethink of it in a new way. So just think of it as nature's way of telling our bodies, hey, it's getting dark out there. It's time to wind down and get some rest. So as evening approaches and the world gets darker, our melatonin rises and starts peaking during the night and then tapering off towards the morning. So melatonin spikes, and I'm talking about release here, and lowers in our bodies based on the position of the sun. Literally, the position of the sun is what tells our body to make or release melatonin, which is pretty badass. So some people have these like sleep conditions like DSPS. I don't know if anybody here has that or wanted to talk about it, but this is a delayed sleep phase syndrome, which I think Michelle probably has right now, where their internal clock is like out of whack and they find themselves like wide awake at 2 o'clock and then can't get out of bed in the morning. So melatonin helps us to resist that internal clock and makes it easier for us to fall asleep at the time we want to. Melatonin is not a sleeping pill at all. So it does not knock you out. It cannot knock you out. Instead, it nudges your body, gently signaling that it's time to get sleepy. So it's a signal that it's time to get sleepy. It doesn't make you do it. So if you're thinking of like trying melatonin during the day, I would still be careful and really plan ahead for issues in case anything comes up. Like don't schedule a super important meeting for them. So it's designed for evening use when your body senses it's about an hour after sunset. And if you take it when the sun's high up, it could mess with your nighttime sleep and really screw your clock up. Here's the hard part. If you take melatonin orally, it goes through a process. It's better to take it in your butthole, as in a suppository form. It's just the way it is. There's a lot of programmed stigma about buttholes in our culture, but some people are just kind of reflexively programmed to back away from anything that goes into our butt. But there's a lot of benefit you can gain from this. Number one, you bypass the digestive system. If you take melatonin orally, you lose about 90%. That's kind of a big number. You take it rectally, you lose about 10%.
People
So
have been asking about the milligram. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, we'll get into that for sure. That's in my notes. So this process reduces the amount of melatonin when it goes through your digestive system. It eventually reaches our bloodstream and there's not much left. And that's because of our liver. And this is a phenomenon that's known as called the first pass effect. So a suppository allows that melatonin to be absorbed directly into your bloodstream through the rectal mucosa. And it's a stunning difference of 90% absorption. That's a huge difference. So melatonin can also be extended release where it doesn't have to go through stomach acid if it's a suppository form. So a suppository can be formulated so it's released over time. So this is super advantageous for people who experience sleep maintenance issues as opposed to just sleep onset problems. Those are the big two sleep issues, sleep onset or sleep maintenance. Melatonin can help with both, but taking it in the evening rectally through a suppository, and they're not huge, can really drastically change your sleep maintenance problems. And for people with hardcore stomach problems, melatonin in suppository form avoids the stomach altogether. Lastly, there's predictable absorption if you use suppository melatonin. If the one thing you're putting in your body to stop cancer, to stop Alzheimer's, to stop degenerative diseases, to stop all kinds of sicknesses and illnesses, should be pretty important to you to get absorption at a really good rate. So your stomach contents, like all the stuff that you eat, seriously influences how every medication you take is absorbed. So almost every food that you could possibly think of has an effect on the pH inside of your tummy. So every time you eat something different, your body mixes it all up with whatever pills you take. And grapefruit, holy crap, grapefruit is one of the most incredible foods that can cause severe drug interactions, like with blood pressure medicines like statins or benzodiazepines and these other things called calcium channel blockers. So suppositories can provide a way more predictable absorption rate. Let me bring my notes back up here. Kind of going off the deep end here on the suppository thing. All right, so if it's in your butt, it's not influenced by any of that other stuff that you ate. It's not going through your liver. It's not going through the first pass. It's not getting diluted. So your body's getting it pure. There is a chance that about 3, give or take, % of people might feel what's called a paradoxical reaction to melatonin. And this is where it creates energy when you take it. And this is not explainable, but every research that I've seen on that was people taking low dose melatonin, like 16 milligrams or less, which I would call low dose. What they give you at the store is 1 milligram to take at nighttime. I've taken over 1,000 at one time, and I didn't get sleepy. High doses of melatonin are more likely to be effective. So if you are one of those people who takes the 1 milligram thing and it gives you restless leg syndrome or something like that, maybe talk to your doctor, of course, before doing any of this. Maybe try the high dose. So sometimes it's the low dose that makes that happen. So I think just the health mode is where melatonin is in there being just a badass in every cell. And I didn't want to go too long tonight, but let's get into dosing really quick because somebody was asking about it. I personally, and for most people, 200 milligrams a day is a great dose. And you can find suppository melatonin on Amazon, there's all kinds of websites, all places you get it. Mine is called Sandman, and I get it from the same place as methylene blue. It comes in a little pouch like that. And it's great. And some of them have melatonin mixed with glutathione, which is good for cellular protection as well. And this is, you can take in the daytime or the nighttime, and they're really tiny. They're like as big around as a number 2 pencil and not as long. So they're easy to put in. It takes about 5 seconds. Any questions on melatonin? I wanted to share this with you because I think it has the capacity to change your life. I have inside and out, I've completely transformed over the last few years. And I've literally somehow been the first person ever to, like, I say this personally only, to literally just cure the symptoms of what I've got going on with my brain. And my skin's better, my cells are better. I've never been healthier. I was on melatonin and methylene blue, and Michelle had COVID for 2 days, and I was making out with her while she tested positive for COVID. I didn't get it, and I tested twice a day for 5 days after that, and was negative every day, and felt like $1,000,000 every day. She couldn't take any of that stuff because she was pregnant. So it's probably a good testament there. So, all right, Kisma, what's up?
Hey, this is amazing. And I started back on the melatonin powder and the gel caps after you like lectured Ian and me all about it. You didn't lecture, but it was really helpful. And slept better, feel better. Question, is it possible? Because I did notice like I was a little groggy the next morning. Is it possible that our baseline of stress is so high that we're kind of just coming back to what's normal and readjusting to that, and that's why some people feel super sleepy or maybe a little groggy?
Wonderful question. Do you mind telling me the milligram dosage you took?
I don't know, I just, it was in powder and I just scooped it up and put it in there,
Because
so I don't know. Definitely
orally,
not 200.
okay, I've seen it go up to about 850 orally.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you take 850, you'll process
You'll feel
200,
it.
but
Yeah.
that is
I mean,
so.
I didn't feel overly groggy, but I'm just wondering, it's like maybe we're just so, we think stress is so normal that when our body, like, I feel like it just tells the body to calm down and we're just dropping all this stuff, and
Yeah.
there's something, like when you're climbing up a mountain, you hold 50 pounds in a backpack and you let it go, you're just kind of like so exhausted. I feel like that's what we do every day, and this might be helping us to kind of get back to what is normal.
Yeah, where there's just not resistance anymore. That's
Hmm.
may very well be. Low dose melatonin has a reputation for doing that though.
Okay. All right. I'm going to get the suppositories and try it. We'll see what's different. Thank you for this.
Thank you for this.
Yeah, thanks, Gizmo.
Yeah, thanks, Gizmo.
Is it okay to use for kids? And what dose would you use for kids?
I would talk to a doctor.
I would talk to a doctor.
Then it for any time you're going to use it with kids, I would go to see a doctor. But kids already have super high levels, and that kids can tolerate tons of melatonin, as far as I know, as far as the research suggests. Sherry, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Chase. This has been great and very unexpected. I didn't know what you were going to choose. My question is about melatonin, and is it considered a vitamin? Because I'm thinking about the immune system and, vitamin D and how it is only activate, a natural vitamin D is only activated, with the sun and the skin. So do any of these does it play with it, in lieu of it, or anything like that?
I don't know. I do know that I think Harvard, maybe the University of Illinois,
Mhm.
published something recently that said, "Is melatonin the new vitamin D?" And that would be good to read. That's the name of the article.
Okay, that's great. And then just to attest to it, my mother, who had many complications, and I owe it to her cardiologist in Houston, Texas, that expanded her life for at least 15 years when she should have been dead, he took off most of her medications, and she definitely took high doses of melatonin.
Whoever that doctor is.
I thanked him in her obituary. He was so important. Thank you again, Chase, for everything.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks, Sherry. Nicholas, you're next, I think.
Yeah, hey Chase.
Okay.
So I remember Joe Dispenza talking about in meditating, melatonin can get converted into, in gamma wave states, can get converted into DMT and oxytocin. But I was wondering, I don't remember what he said about using meditation to increase melatonin production. Do you know anything about that?
No.
Like if we were in deep theta or delta brainwave states, would that trigger something like sleep would? I don't know.
There's only one chemical that triggers or stops melatonin, and that's opsin. And opsin is in almost every cell of your body. So much so that they did a study. You know what fiber optics are?
Mm-hmm.
I think most people do. Like you shine a light on this long cord and it comes out the other side. So the room is totally blacked out, and there's a tiny fiber optic cable that's covered up. You can't see the light in the cable at all. Just there's a tiny bit of light shining out of the tip, and they taped it to the back of people's knee. a tiny amount of light and then put tape over that to where that didn't emit any light, but they were shining into the skin on the back of the knee. The skin has opsin, which is in your eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
Your skin has photoreceptors that can see light and darkness, just like your retinas can. And it stopped the release of melatonin while that person slept. And that's why everybody says you need to sleep in these dark rooms, because of this opsin that's in all of our cells. But melatonin is 100% regulated by light, as far as I know. And I don't have it all figured out.
So to increase it naturally would be sunshine first thing in the morning, sleep in a really dark room, don't get a ton of blue light before bed, and then take a supplement, right?
Yes.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Wonderful question. Jarhead, what you got?
Hey, Jake, so what about cycling? Is it supposed to be cycled, days on and off, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter that much. There are no real studies that say it's bad or that it has that effect where it's going to stop working in your body. The doctors that I know take it every day of their life. I don't know where you went, but I've never heard or seen any evidence that taking it long term is bad for you. I'll just say that.
Okay. And then just quick follow-up question on the piece you mentioned about the autism piece. Is there an age where, I know you said that for kids, like you're the doctor, but is there a certain age that you recommend starting it? And then is there a frequency or dosage for treating autism?
If it was my child, I would want to start them at about 1 month old.
Okay.
Because that's about the signs that a very good pediatrician can start seeing the early developmental signs of autism.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Merlin, hey man.
Hey, bro. So I'm just on the Mitozen website here. So you said the Sandman one is the one you use, and I was obviously there's no bad interaction between that and the methylene blue. You can be taking those same day.
Yep.
And then my other question is for the insertion of that stuff. It's like the magic bullet thing. So like, what are you doing here with this magic bullet without being too graphic? Want to gross everyone out. Like, how does this go down? You just take the little magic bullet and you just put it up there.
You just put it up there and then pull your finger out.
Oh man. Okay. And then I also saw they had methylene blue in the same type of capsules. Is it the same thing where there's a drastic amount of more uptake with the methylene blue if it's taken that way?
Yes, but don't change your dosage. Good question. So you can take suppository methylene blue. I've never done it. I worry about what the toilet would look like, because my pee already stains it blue, and that's through oral route.
Right. It seems like it's going good. So oral is probably good for methylene blue. Is probably enough uptake. We don't need to worry about the double whammy there. Right on. Thank you, sir.
Just don't get them mixed up.
Chase?
That's true. Yeah. Hey, Mike.
Hey, what about sublingual? Is there a the uptake, you said 90% with stomach acids, versus under your tongue? Do you know any of the numbers on that?
Sublingual, the research that I've read, about 1 to 2% dissolves and actually absorbs into the bloodstream from there. And it only sublingual works faster because it dissolves and you're swallowing the contents that don't have to go through a digestion process. It gets right in. So it's essentially like taking a BC powder of, whatever you're doing.
Right. So you said so if you take it through the stomach, you get 10%. Sublingually, it's 1 or 2%. And then
Well,
rectally,
it's-
it's 90%.
1 or 2 into the blood plus the 10 that makes it, if it makes it all the way past the
Okay.
liver.
Okay. Cool.
So your stomach's still getting the stuff you're swallowing from the sublingual drug.
I'm just, probably like a I'll just go out and say it. Like a few others, we're trying to find some other way to get it into our system, and I just figured under the tongue was, worth a
Yeah.
chance.
You could IV it, but I mean, if there's nothing wrong with the butthole method.
You can't blame a guy for trying,
There's nasal stuff, Mike, if you want to try something. The nasal spray is supposedly the next best after, if you don't want to do that. And they sell the nasal melatonin on Amazon. It's still not as good as Chase's method, but it's better than eating the tablets.
Man, I'd rather put it in my butthole than spray a bunch of stuff like that up my nose. Anyway, so it is good. It's you can take it with methylene blue. It has very little drug interactions, which is another reason you should talk to your doctor. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a neuroscientist. So your doctor should be able to tell you everything you need if you have a good one. Hopefully you've got a DO or somebody like that you can go talk to. Carter, hey man, what's up?
Hey man, so I was glad to hear you talk about Otto Warburg because I got this book. I don't know if you've heard of it, called Ravenous,
I own it. Yeah.
and it is on my list, and so I was really happy to cover it because I've talked to
Hey Carter, I muted you for 1 second. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
that are cancer survivors about the subject, and
Is that happening for
it's
everybody?
it's me now. I don't know.
Carter, we couldn't hear you that whole
Right.
time. It was really choppy. You turned
Oh.
into a slow motion robot.
Okay.
But I love that book. I own it.
Well, I think that we covered it all. It's a great book. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Sorry about the issue. So I know 13 doctors that are my close friends. Every one of those doctors has told me to read one book, the same book, and all of them have told me to read it independently from each other. And the book literally changed everything that I know about our bodies and understanding health and medicine. And the book is called Goodbye, Germ Theory. Definitely not part of mastery or homework or anything like that, but if you really want to open your eyes, every one of these doctors that I know independently told me I have to read this book. So, and after the 10th or 11th one told me, I finally bought it. But it's really good. It's got a really weird cover. It looks like a kid drew it or something like that, but you'll never be the same after you read it. And you'll probably be pissed off.
Hey, Chase.
Anthony, to your question, that's correct. Put a tablet on the floor and then sit on it. That's absolutely correct. Yes. Hey, Christine.
Hey, I just want to say thank you so much for bringing this up. I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer, had a total mastectomy, and not once did our doctor encourage outside perspective like this. So I want to tell you, thank you very, very much.
And you're good now?
Oh, yeah. I beat the snot out of that crap.
Good. Good.
Yep.
Really glad
Yes.
to hear it.
You take it an hour after sunset?
Say again, Joseph.
You take it an hour after sunset?
Give or take. Yeah. I forget, and sometimes it's 9 o'clock before I take it.
If you poop 30 minutes after you take it, do you gotta take it again?
What's that?
If you go to the bathroom 30 minutes after you take it, you got to take it again.
That's why taking it right before bed is the best approach. But after half an hour, no, you wouldn't have to take it again.
It's so freaking cool to see the effects that it has on you. Seriously, that was so freaking awesome to hear.
It's been incredible. So it's a huge part of my life. Methylene blue, melatonin are, I think, the closest thing we've got to like miracle molecules on our planet. And psilocybin, of course, is a miracle vet. So, but appreciate it, everybody. I want to leave this open for discussion. I've transcribed every thing from tonight, and I will even put the images from the briefing in the notes for this video once this video goes up. And the first video I would recommend you, or just not even video, just type in Dr. John Lawrence and then melatonin on YouTube, and you'll see it. It's spelled Frenchly, like Lieurance, Lawrence. And that in itself will get you tons of stuff from an actual doctor. He's the guy who owns this company talking about melatonin, the company that makes these. And he lives down in Florida. If you ever put those like squishy earplugs in your ear at like a gun range, that's about the size of these suppositories. So it's super easy and incredibly life-changing. So I hope this was beneficial for you. I know it's not influence, persuasion stuff, but I think it has the capacity to bring your life into a better place where you, by default, kind of get better at those things because you're just doing well and kicking ass. So you're in enjoyment more. You've got more confidence because you're healthier and fit and maybe sexier. It'll make you sexier too. I hope it does for Ian, especially. Ian, I love you, man. Love you, everybody.
Love you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much, Chase.